dinner. You're the best person to have in your one's corner. Okay, thanks everyone. My name is Ginger Eke Onyankachi, a current founding fellow of the MIT Co-Sharper Center for Prosperity and Entrepreneurship. Founded a couple of startups focused on one hand, international trade and cross-border logistics across Africa, and on the other hand, which is more specific to this topic, on education and technology in Africa, driving, in fact, reimagining education in Africa, looking at the teeming youth that we have in Africa, trying to ensure that these students in higher education can graduate either work ready or ready to start up a business. So it's a pleasure to be here to introduce this timely conversation on reimagining education for a more prosperous future. As we all know, education sits at the heart of sustainable development, but in today's fast-changing world, it must also be the bedrock, and I emphasize all these words, of entrepreneurial talent, innovation, and inclusive economic growth. This morning, the panel seated would explore how education acts as a bedrock for nurturing entrepreneurial talent and driving innovation across industries, the role technology plays in expanding access to education and in adapting educational systems to today's world, among other essential topics as time permits. So it's my honor to introduce, in no particular order, Alim Ladder, please. So he's the CEO of Instill Education. Aline Kabanda, please, I apologize for not pronouncing any names properly. She's a Rwanda country director for Alan and Gail Gray Philanthropies. Paula Haraka, CEO of Anima Education. His Excellency, Minister Sayasat Nobek, Minister of Science and Higher Education, Republic of Kazakhstan. And Tama Taman, founder and chairman of New Era Education. Thanks. Yusuf Ahmed, co-founder of PlayLab. And guiding this discussion is our esteemed moderator, Elias Felfau, Director of Summits and Partnerships, EdTech at Wise Qatar Foundation. Thank you. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you very much for this warm introduction. I'm very happy to see the room complete. I think everyone is, respectful of Dina's very, strict, come to the room for the sessions. I'm once again very happy to be here. Dina, thank you, and the whole team, thank you for organizing such an important event on such an important time. Welcome everyone once again to this topic, reimagining education for a more prosperous future, or with your permission, Dina, we might call it a new calculus for education. My name is Elias. I'm part of WISE, an initiative of the Qatar Foundation. I am originally from Tunisia, and when my parents moved to Canada in 1995, for one simple reason, to provide us with a better education opportunities, believing wholeheartedly that education is the key to improving one's life. Today, I see many immigrants to Canada with the same aspirations. But I'm concerned that education no longer holds the same promises for upward mobility. The erosion of trust in education as a leveling force is deeply troubling. What happened to make education less effective in helping individuals achieving that better life and that dream and have a more prosperous future? Well, in this session, we will explore how education is still the bedrock for driving innovation and progress across industries. We will talk about the transformative role of technology and how this is expanding access, and we will discuss how reshaping education system to meet the demand of today's reality and today's economy. And I'm excited that we have a diversity of leaders from the policy making to the startups, large companies and for-profit and non-for-profit. And while I would ask everyone to start with 1 minute introduction and 1 minute just to answer the question of, we have been under the impression that education have been creating talent to seek jobs and not create jobs. Just a quick reaction with the introduction about yourself and your work. And I'll start with exactly this order, and then it's gonna be, I wanna see reaction, I wanna see this an engaging conversation, because Dina have put a lot of pressure from the panel number 1. So let's make this panel another engaging one. Minister, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Elias. And since it's a quick reaction, there are two contradicting forces which actually created that distrust in education. On one hand, we have a lot of pressure on education systems from technology. And if you look back last century only, when radio came about, a lot of experts would say, wow, we have a big, new, massive tool to deliver information to many people. It's going to change the essence of education. And the very first radio programs back in the US and in Europe were actually education programs. You watch those old cartoons and they would be telling stories and kids listening. Did it change the modus operandi of education system, the classroom, teacher, instruction, people listening, delivering front information? No. Then came television, and a lot of experts says, wow, now we have a visual tool, massive platform to deliver information to as many people as possible. Did it change the modus operandi and the essence of the classroom teaching, which was being there for a century, for millennia? Not really. Then came internet, and then people said, wow, finally, we have this new tool. Now everything is going to change. We have MOOCs and we have virtual reality. And you go back to any ordinary school in many parts of the world, did it really change the essence of classroom teaching? Questions? Can I ask a question, please? Not really. Now we have AI, artificial intelligence, and all the experts say, finally, the mightiest of the tools is here. Now really, we will change everything. So let me hang on that moment for a bit. And on the other hand, the education, and a lot of experts talk about building future-proof education systems, introducing these great new strategies, large countries pouring billions and billions in infrastructure capacity building. But in its core, in essence, education is the most conservative area you would ever find. Believe me, I've been a Minister of Education for 3 years, and every time I try to change curricula, Jesus H. Christ. The pressure, resistance I got from my very own faculty is like, that damn minister with all these crazy ideas. No, we've invested so much in building this curricula. Now he's going to change it every year. Nah. So there's this contradicting nature. Everybody talks about future-proof education. Everybody talks about, changing landscape of labor force, finding new jobs and skills. But in its essence, there's a lot of conservative energy that actually stalls all these momentum. So I'll leave it here.
I see a lot of nods here, and I'm sure there's a lot of reaction, but we're going to go to Paula. Tell us a little bit about what you do and just a reaction on the first question.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Paula. I've been introduced as CEO of Anima Education. That's my mission, but I am a lifelong learner. That's who I am, and that is why I'm so grateful to be here, Dina, Bruno, and everybody. I am a daughter of a professor. My mother was a university teacher for 50 years. She has just retired. And the only one heritage that I have in life is education. So I am here due to education. Now I am leading the biggest education ecosystem in Brazil. Anima Education takes care of 500,000 students every day. It's 400 and something, round up 500,000 students, dreams, lives every day. And there is a situation before going to, in Brazil, out of 10 million higher education students, 80% are on private universities. That is why the impact of an education company, education system is so huge. Because normally those 2 million that they had access to the public university that is for free are those with high income and high education. So this is one of the paradox, as the minister was saying, regarding technology. But reacting to the question, Elias, in the AI area, maybe we should open discussions on another AI, that is ancestral intelligence. Because we are so focused on technology, but what is maybe the big opportunity that we can have is to give back humanity to humans, now that technology will do a lot of the work. And another reflection is, what is the role of universities in this context? Because content is available everywhere. You don't need to go to university, actually, to learn. So maybe university is a place where those young people, because we are not talking of those that can make it to the MIT. We are talking to those that have no idea of what they want to do with their lives, if they want to work, what they want to do. So maybe the university is kind of a healing center where you can heal your pains, your concerns, your doubts, where it is a safe zone that you can learn by doing mistakes, you can experiment, you can find your ikigai. Where is your passion, your vocation, your profession, your talent? So I believe that the question, okay, we need to create jobs. I'm sure about that. Only 1 in 10 students in Brazil are working in their area of knowledge. In Anima, it's 8 in 10. And this has to do with a total switch that we did with our curriculum, influencing and in partnership with the government in Brazil, to have social, emotional competencies, character, of course, content, and concepts as well, but very focused on competencies development.
Thank you. Alim, there's a reason why you're in the middle. You're part of the accelerator. You've been part of the WISE accelerator. We work together. I see you as an entrepreneur who went through the ups and downs of the journey. Any reaction? First of all, introduce yourself, of course, but also you have an important role by sitting in the middle. You want to bring the tempo back high.
I love the pressure of following His Excellency and Paula here. I'm Alim. I was part of the WISE Tech Accelerator. I'm a Foundry Fellow as well. I've spent the last 10 years of my life focusing on what I think is the most important leverage point in our education system, which is our teachers. Right? So have built universities focused on teacher training and how do you support teachers in their life cycle, right? So not just let's get your degree and go out in the real force. And I'm going to say something controversial, right? And I'm going to go back to the era of COVID. We all remember COVID, schools shut down, and there's this realization a teacher in Ghana actually said to me is, every time our country has a problem, teachers are the solution and teachers are the problem, right? So we had a lot of kids with grief at home, so we had to become grief counselor. Actually, our most downloaded module on our platform was how to support students with grief. Every time AI enters a classroom, nobody in the policy space understands AI that much. They can use the words, but we have to figure out how to put it in the classroom. Our kids have difficult homes, difficult socioeconomic environments. We have to go figure it out. You've installed smart TVs in every classroom. We have to go figure it out. Now you want us to be job creators and trainers of entrepreneurs. The teachers have to go do it. And I do think that the framing of the education system is the solution to all our problems as a society is what we have to shift. And I think I love what you said, is this idea that if we're going to reimagine education, we have to reimagine it outside of the confines of a classroom with teachers, because what we're asking them to do is absolutely impossible. None of the smart people in this room here, I'm sure there are educators here, raise your hand, educators, right, can do everything we're expecting our teachers to do to solve all our societal problems, right? So I do think the shift that we need to make doesn't reside in what happens in the classroom, right? The issue of job creation in global growth market is not an education-only problem, education in a traditional way. I think we have to think about the role of labor policies. We have to talk about, what is happening in the job market. We have to expand the definition of happened in your household, what happens outside of the classroom. And perhaps, and this is maybe the push I'm making, and I'm coming from a perspective of working on the African continent, is if we can just focus on getting our young people to read, to write, to ask good questions, and to be in a safe environment, rather than keep adding more, perhaps we're actually going to get on the right path. Otherwise, we'll do what Your Excellency just said, which is, AI is going to solve everything. It's not, right? It's not. Good middle answer?
No, you're on top of the game. That's perfect. Aline, it's your turn.
Thank you for having me. I just wanted to thank all of the speakers and the panel members. I've been amazed by the depth of knowledge and sharing, lessons learned, and it's been truly inspiring to be here. So the work that we do at the Alan and Jill Gray Philanthropies is really centered around the pursuit of catalyzing high-impact entrepreneurship in Africa. And so there are a couple of interventions that we have, but I'll just mention very quickly two. And so we run a talent investor program where we invest in exceptional talent, highly driven individuals from Rwanda, Kenya, and Ethiopia. And for a period of 1 year, we support them in the process of launching businesses from scratch, really from problem identification to market entry. But then we had a question, which is, how about the young generation? Because with the Talent Investor Program, we're supporting individuals post-university with a couple of years' experience. And so, we wanted to go back to actually looking at ways of building entrepreneurial thinking much earlier on in secondary school. And so we're running a program, which is an entrepreneurship challenge in Rwanda and in Kenya. And the way it works is that, it's a gamified platform that is accessible to all students. And on a yearly basis, we will select about 6 industries or quests, which we call quests. And so exposing students to, one, understanding the reality around them, the stories of entrepreneurs who are doing amazing work, whether in the country, in their communities, in the region, on the continent. And so a mix of that then would allow them to then build entrepreneurial aspiration. But to answer your question, I think for me, the shift has to be in really going back to who we are as human beings, and to understand that with a world that is fast changing, it is about really building and embedding components around, some people call it soft skills, I call them power skills. They call them life skills, but it really is around, nurturing a sense of responsibility for self, responsibility for others, looking at ways of creating environments, that would build, a sense of taking action and initiative, to learn, to be curious. And so for me, really the shift has to happen in understanding that in a world that is fast changing, education is no longer about providing all answer, but equipping young people with the tools to be able to be curious, to learn, to be adaptable, to be agile. So that's... Thanks.
Thank you very much for this perspective. One more thing about the richness of this panel, and again, thanks to the team, we really have a diversification of continent here. We have Asia, we have Southeast, Latin America. Alim, you operate in many places in Africa, Rwanda, and now we want to hear the perspective from a very small country in North Africa. Please give us a bit of perspective on the work you do, Thamer. Small, very little one, on the perspective of the work you do, and just reaction on the first question, please.
Okay, I'll start first by introducing myself. My name is Tamer Tammam. I'm a dentist by degree, educator by conviction. I started my career as assistant teacher. I was 18 years old. I was teaching mathematics for IGCSE. My dream was one day to get premium education from the world to my country back. And for such a dream to happen, you have to have the means, financial support. So I worked for years in teaching career. And then I started my company, advertising, which is parallel, specialized in education, marketing and advertising for schools, for universities. And I traveled, studied New York Film Academy to support my business. It grew. It became one of the largest advertising and media companies in Egypt. And at that point of time, I decided to return to my passion and do my dream and achieve it, and started New Era Education, where we brought Uppingham from UK, which is a school of 440 years, to be the first branch for the school in Egypt. And we were innovative enough to build on what they had and to continue on it. So we signed with Rafa Nadal Academy for tennis, NBA for basketball, Chelsea Football Center, Lambda for music and drama, and put it under one roof. So we're providing holistic education. Because I think, for your question, holistic education is a solver to build character more than anything, to build self-disciplined future leaders. It's not about being a job seeker, because at one point of time during my life, I was seeking job for financials. It's about building character to be leader in the future. So as simple as that. And to finish, I'm really honored to be among you today. Thank you so much.
We're honored to have you with us as well. Yusuf, you love to get yourself in trouble by fixing big problems. And right now you've created a platform. Tell us a little bit about the platform and how through these new technologies you think you could provide solution to some of the challenges we have in our education field.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. And I think really I want to focus on one thing first before talking about what I do. I think to your first question, like how do you shift from job seekers to job creators? There's a theme that I've heard, and that's about culture. How do you create cultures of agency where people have the power and they feel empowered to go do things and create things in the world? And the story I want to share is Janan still in the room? So Janan leads MIT's Sandbox initiative. It's one of MIT's entrepreneurship programs. And Dina will relay the story to Janan. But I think the story really goes like this. One of the open secrets about a place like MIT is that the most powerful learning at MIT does not happen in the classes here. I want to repeat that. Like the most powerful learning at MIT does not happen in classes as part of formal academics. It happens in the research labs, it happens in clubs and activities, it happens in the dorms during late night conversations, and it happens through programs like Janan's. And the reason I call it Sandbox is the name implies what it's for. It's a place for people to play, to build relationships with other people, to work with other people, and to experiment, both balancing learning through play and learning through relationships, but also building towards something and being part of a community where people level you up, hold you accountable, show you things and help you dream of things that are bigger than what you could think of possible for yourself. And so I think that for me is like, an example, a metaphor for how to build an agentic culture. Our role, so what I do during the day is I'm building a company. We're a tech nonprofit. It was a very deliberate decision, happy to talk more about that later, where we build software that enables educators, schools, universities, and more to build AI applications that reflect their values and their needs. And I think the thesis there goes like this, right? The reason we're called Play Lab is first we think you need to play with these technologies. Play with them so you can understand them, so you can interrogate and critique them, because there's a lot of harms that AI has created. If you know Dr. Joy Buolamwini, her work at MIT, there are many others like Dr. Ruha Benjamin, Sophia Noble, who've documented a lot of the harms with AI. So it's important to play with it so you can interrogate, but also so then you can bend the technology to meet your needs and build agency along the way. And so I think that's a core thesis of our work at Play Lab. And I think kind of to even like if I go back to His Excellency's point, we also work with ministries of education in the Global South. We work with large districts like Boston Public Schools and New York City Public Schools. And a lot of that work then is how do you build agency within a system? How do you work with leaders, instructional coaches, teachers, paraprofessionals to explore how might this new technology not just be something that's coming to you, but that's something that you can appropriate and adapt to meet your needs and to bring your vision to life.
I'll stay with you. Why AI is it's a game changer? And right after, I'll go with to you, Your Excellency, about this.
So I think, like, if we step back a moment, has anyone here heard of Seymour Papert? Of course, Joy is right here. Dr. Joy Buolamwini is one of the people I mentioned. Totally did not notice you. But so Seymour Papert founded the MIT AI Lab. Have folks heard of the AI Lab here at MIT? So he co-founded the MIT AI Lab. He also co-founded the Media Lab over 50 years ago. But if you forget the technology for a second, what motivated him was first and foremost, how do we create what he calls constructionist environments, places where people can learn by creating. And for him, first and foremost, AI was about that. How do you use technology that could be more personable, more appropriable? And so kind of that's the background. The second piece is people have been working on this for a long time. But I think we finally have reached a place where I think there are a lot of things that I can say here, but I think the thing I'd index on is what I think is going to happen in the next 10 years is the ability to create software is going to radically become easier. Has anyone here heard of vibe coding? Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me ask you a different question. Has anyone here tried building software? Not many hands. Who here has like published a social media post? LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, a lot more hands. And so I think my thesis is that it's going to be as easy to create software as it is to publish a social media post. The real question, I think, for me then becomes, how do you enable people to do that thoughtfully? How do you enable them to do that responsibly? How do you enable them to do that in ways where it's not being platformized, so being consolidated by a tech platform where you don't own the technology? And so part of the reason we're a nonprofit is it allows us to go slower. We can interrogate the technology for bias. We can also kind of build towards an open source future where instead of you relying on Google or OpenAI or Anthropic, you can instead appropriate the tools and take the tech stack wherever you want it to be, right? So I think that's kind of the second thing that we're thinking about.
Fascinating. Your Excellency, we just had a brief conversation together before coming to the room, and my initial question to you, I wanted to pick the brain of a policymaker at a country level to understand in this current geopolitical situation, how countries like yours is taking advantage from higher education. And then you showed me your passion toward another project you're leading right now, which is AI Sana. How AI now, and everything is about rethinking how you're going to integrate AI into the system to lead us to more effective entrepreneurship. Tell us a little bit on the reform you led in higher education, but we want this kind of inspiring conversation that I had with you. I would love to bring it to the audience just to understand the vision you have for AI Sana.
Thank you, Elias. So we started thinking really, really hard when our ministry was created. We're a very young ministry. We're 3 years old. How can we respond to all these big challenges and resistances and pressures and then future-proof education? That's the big word now. How do you build future-proof education systems? So we started with 3 things, tackling 3 problems, which we believe are the key problems. One, and I'm so happy some of our panelists brought that up, teachers. Teachers have lost 3 important monopolies they always had in history of humankind. Monopoly of knowledge. Teacher is not the most knowledgeable person in the room anymore. And when you're in confined space with 30 plus kids locked in and you speak ex cathedra, you are the most knowledgeable, wisest person in the room? No. Why? There's great change, great equalizer. Now students may know more. And a lot of teachers around the globe are intimidated now by giving facts. Like, a teacher, the Google says it's 1537. Not 35, shame on you, shame on you. Monopoly, what we call it a moral monopoly. So the teacher was a person in that confined space of the classroom with most life experience, but not anymore. There are students who have, come from rich backgrounds. They travel to Paris. Ms. Sheldon, I'll bring you something from Paris when we come back. You have any specific you want me to bring? And that poor teacher might have never been to Paris. He might have never had that experience. But important of all, teachers have lost monopoly of focus. So when you're in that confined space with 30 plus students, there were no things back in the days. You are ex cathedra. You are the center of that small universe back in the days. Not anymore. You have to compete for attention of your students. And there are huge platforms, there are huge tech giants creating content, employing best scenarios, best composers, best special effects people, and their content is now competing with content, with limited content and resources of that particular teacher. So you're now in competition with content-wise, delivery-wise, interest-wise, with huge platforms. So now we're completely changing the role of teacher, and thank you for very important comment. I'm not in fight and conflict with my teacher community. We have completely revamped all our teachers. We have 5 pedagogical normal universities curricula, completely. It's very different, and we're changing the philosophy of the classroom and changing the role of the teacher. We're trying to do that on national level. Teacher is not an instructor and center of the universe and wisest and most knowledgeable person in the room anymore. He is a nudger. He is the supporter. He is the one to provide, instill values, lead by example, support and nurture, and he's the curator. Now there's this famous movie, Ready Player One, when there was a curator, right? And he says, well, I'm here to answer your question. I'm here to guide. I'm here to help. But I'm not here for you. It has to be you to take that journey. I'm just here to support you. Second problem, and I'm so happy Yusuf actually touched the vibe coding. It's a brand new word. You'll be hearing more and more about that. So you can actually code just using a language. English is becoming a new coding language, the standard for coding. Why? We started to look at how generations change, right? So, and in my personal experience, I have 3 kids. My youngest is 9 years old. She's very, very advanced now. This new alpha generation, whatever they call it now, it's just amazing. It's going to be an amazing generation. She looked at my phone and said, "What's this G?" I said, "It's Google. It's the most recognizable brand. I grew up with Google." She said, DeepSeek is better. And so it's just bad news for Google out there and bad news for many great tech companies because this new generation is different. It's very resourceful. It's very pragmatic. It wants more. It can use it can really harness the power of AI. And now there was a great talk, and I do urge you to watch Sam Altman from OpenAI talking about 1 billion person startups. Unicorns, whatever they're trying to find a new name for it. Big AI is now giving this extra advantage. The venture capital is changing dramatically. Seed strapping, another new word for you. When startups take just seed money and then the cash generation is there because now 2 people can run a company that used to be run by 50 or 100 people. Coding, marketing, revenue generation, accounting, whatever, it's now automated, can be automated. And if you harness that power, you're there. And last prerequisite is the essence of teaching, the model of teaching. We used to pass knowledge. All education systems are basically to give enough critical knowledge so that person can go out and, he has said, job seeker, not job creator. So the best formula is Alvin Toffler's formula. The illiterate of 21st century is not someone who can't read or write, is someone who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. Right, so we have completely changing all our curricula, and bear with me just 2 more minutes. That new program we're starting a bunch of new programs. We're the first nation in the world to make Coursera part of our national curricula. So any student in Kazakhstan can choose electives out of Coursera courses. Jeff Majinkala, the former CEO of Coursera, he was our best PR agent. He goes, we're running this big project in Kazakhstan, and if students can take this career track course and get a certificate, we give them credit. So we're the first ones to attach credit transfer mechanism to it. So we said, okay, great promise of AI, changing the role of teachers, this new generation, which is very resourceful, pragmatic, open-minded, tech. I mean, they're born with this, right? What can be done to make sure the great promise of AI is delivered? Because what's happening right now, everybody's talking about great promise of AI, radical change, transformation, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, it's domain of large tech companies competing with each other and national strategies. You're seeing AI as this great new weapon. Weaponization of AI is a big thing. And you have nations competing. We have better algorithms. We have more computing power. But the real promise of AI has hasn't delivered yet. I mean, you go to any small, medium enterprises, cafes and restaurants, it's not there yet. You go to individual level, it's not there yet. There were great examples, though, great examples. Government of Finland, back in 2018, launched a program called Elements of AI, and they had a goal to teach 1% of adult population to use AI in everyday life. They reached 10% now. It's a great example. You can check it out. So we said we go hardcore. We go hardcore. So starting from this year, every student in Kazakhstan has to take AI courses. We made it part of national curricula. We made it compulsory. Not just any courses. We carefully designed some really good courses in partnership with Google, Huawei, and NVIDIA. We're part of NVIDIA's DLI, Deep Learning Institute initiative. So every student is taking these courses and gets certificate. Out of 650,000 students in Kazakhstan, the first graders, that first generation of alpha going out in higher education, 80% of all the certificates are alpha. Now, second stage, we said that's not nearly enough. We need to teach them how to use this AI to create jobs. So the calculus for global prosperity we will have answer of our own, a solution of our own. We believe we found a really good formula. 100,000 students out of 650 will go to second stage, the special module designed by Paul Kim, CTO at Stanford University. A really good, we have a lot of accolades.
I wanted to hold this idea because I want to deep dive in it. I just want to have the reaction of...
Ilya, let me just quickly finish. And the idea of this whole course called AI entrepreneurship is to equip every student with a very specific knowledge, how to identify business niches where AI can add value using a subject area, because these courses, AI courses, are for everyone, accountants, historians, all majors, across all majors, and where AI can add value. So we are embarking on this new interesting journey, and I hope...
This is we want to get back to this. Okay. I think we could have this kind of vision and implementation and see the reaction of other folks, but keep that idea, please, because I want to get back to it, because I want to ask Alim. His Excellency mentioned a lot about the teacher role. When you started Instill, we were sure that this is going to be, people will follow your vision, because the foundation of a great education system or learning experience is the role of the teacher. So we were clearly adamant about the idea that people will give money for this. Give us the challenge. Why was that difficult to embark people into this kind of adventure? But also, why is so difficult to train teacher in this new era of AI and this fast advancement?
Okay, that was a left field question. It was on your list of questions.
No, I know, because you told
I know.
Dina put pressure on me before the panel.
Look, let me start with the second question. I actually, maybe my colleagues here will have a different experience. I actually think the training teachers for the paradigm shift that His Excellency talked about isn't the hard thing, right? The clarity of what they need and how their role needs to evolve is not a complicated thing to do, right? If I go back to what we were doing at Instill Education, we focused on core skills. How do you run a classroom? How do you create a safe environment for students to learn? How do you get students to ask better questions? How do you get them to work together with each other? How do you do more independent practice in a classroom rather than the sage on the stage version of I know the answers, I have the questions, please now follow what I'm trying to do. That's what we focused on, and you were seeing the uptake. We learned two things by doing that. The first thing is teachers were adopting very quickly, right? Because for them, the reason they were resisting to change was fear. It's not having the confidence to be able to do what we're asking them to do. And now you're giving them the tools to be confident to let go, to be prepared, but to let go, right? And when we did an assessment, an M&E on what the teachers were telling us, the most surprising thing I got was an increase in job satisfaction. And when we went into the qualitative data, what teachers were telling us is, I woke up every day not being fearful about these 30 kids who are going to ask me questions, I'm not going to have answers, I don't know what to do with this. It was, I feel confident that I can navigate that in the classroom. And they were getting validating feedback from the students themselves, telling them, why can't all the other teachers in the school teach the way you do? Can we all be on your class? So I think what His Excellency said is spot on, but I actually don't think we make the teachers this force that protects the vested interests, and I don't think that's necessarily true. Now, the second question, I guess it's a very personal reflection on why instill education didn't survive after 8 years of fighting and all that is, my reflection is twofold. I think people are still looking for silver bullets, right? Whether you talk to philanthropies, whether you talk to investors, they're looking for that AI application that is going to, I mean, the number of times I've heard the story of, wow, we won't need teachers in the future. Like, that's done. Like, the era of teachers is over.
Without a guarantee of positive outcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Money is pouring into AI, but you have no idea if anyone is going to make it to
Absolutely. And I get very comforted by talking to people like Yusuf, who talk about how do you hand over the technology for teachers to build for their classrooms. So I think, to me, the first reflection on why we didn't survive after 9 years of fighting and raising funding is, when it comes to philanthropies, they're looking for the fancy thing that they're going to put in their booklets to say, look, we've saved Africa by giving 7,000 tablets to kids, and the technology is going to solve the answer. And that's not what we were doing. We were going into the entrails of the education system, working on behavior management, classroom engagement, the core things that make you a great facilitator of learning. I think when it comes to venture capitalists, I think it was the same. The conversations I had with, I've spoken to over 400 investors about what we're trying to do, and inevitably the conversation was, what you're doing is the most important thing our African countries need to have is upskilling, increasing, improving the quality of teaching and learning in the classroom. But you're not AI enough, you're not tech enough, you're not, right? This whole idea of rebuilding the human infrastructure of our education system isn't sexy. But that's where the hard work is, right? And I think that's my reflection on why we got to at least where we got to. Because every philanthropy was like, okay, but I want to see your tech stack. And I'm like, it isn't a complicated tech stack. That's not where the magic is.
Thank you for your candid answer. Aline, and thank you for touching upon the funding from a philanthropy point of view, because that's a great segue for me to ask Aline the question about, I can imagine that philanthropy is going through an important challenge. Do we all agree on this at a global level? And let's not focus on the challenges, because we see them. Do you see opportunities? Do you see a new way that philanthropy is going to play an important role with kind of adapting to these changes?
That's a great question. And indeed, we live in times of changes, but I think there's a lot of learnings that we should be taking out of it. There's a reason why things are happening the way they're happening. I think for me, I'm looking at opportunities for strategic partnerships and alliances. I'll give an example. I talked about this program that we're running in secondary schools. And so, in Rwanda and Kenya. And back then, our objective was to, only focus in these two countries. And having seen the impact of the program, we then said, we actually have to establish big, hairy, audacious goals. We want to see 1 million students engaged, not just registering, but engaged in the program. And so, we then established that goal that, would take us to 10 countries by 2030. But we can only achieve that through partnerships. And so in our next country being Ethiopia, we had to look for partners on the ground, just letting go of the belief that one has to do everything by themselves. And with our approach of actually taking a long-term approach in entrepreneurship, development, it only makes sense that the sustainable way of doing that is through, partnerships and collaboration. I think yesterday there was these strong elements of, building together and building businesses, thriving businesses together. So that, for me, that should be the shift in the way we are managing these times of changes and uncertainty.
Thank you, Aline. Tamer, I want to go back to Dunya. For people who don't speak Arabic, Dinya in English is the mother of the world, which is Egypt. You lead a private school. But there's a lot of issues. So I don't know, I was speaking to an Egyptian friend, said, if you build schools every day for the next 10 years, you will not reach the number of student matching the need. You're building private schools, but how is it? How do you contribute to the equity in this such a context?
For a country like Egypt, we have 25 million students only in K-12. So, and 40% of them are already in private schools. Private schools in Egypt starts from very low fees, low tier, until premium. It is the importance of how you can benefit all across the system, even private or public. So based on true story which happened, bringing top premium education to the country, it leads all other schools to raise their level, the competition, to raise the level of quality of education they will provide. Contribution to community by partnerships between schools, public, private, competitions, tournaments, scholarship programs in private schools. All of this will matter to the students, will increase the quality of education of the full country like Egypt.
Paula, you often speak, and even in the introduction, the importance about going back to the level of humanity and humanize the education. You should just guide us a little bit. How do we do this concretely without going into the philosophy of how do we? And by the way, I like if you hear any AI, the Sam Altman or the Hasabi. By the way, there's an amazing 60-minute interview with Hasabi, and he finished his interview by saying, "Oh, we need more philosophy," or why we're building all of this if we're going back to the core, and how are you contributing to this kind of conversation of putting humanity at the center of building AI?
This is a super challenge for us because as machines and technology is becoming super efficient in doing, maybe it is our chance to become better in being. That is what makes us human. We're human beings. So to make future prosperous means to make it high tech and high touch. And this has a lot of neuroscience behind. It's not something romantic. We have one of our mentors is a super philosopher in Brazil, a friend of our founders, and another is a neuroscientist. And this neuroscientist, Nicolelis, super top professor, he was lecturer and researcher here in the US as well. He made an experiment on learning neuroscience activity, monitoring the students on the classroom, and he did that in different environments. So they were watching a video, they were doing some projects, and what they found after going through 1,000 students is that the learning curve, the best learning experience takes place when the student is connected to the teacher. The teacher brings connection. AI doesn't bring connection. AI brings answers, ways, platforms, solutions, but not human connection. And I believe that most of us may learn or recall some teacher that was super important in our career. That they say, Paula, you're very good at this, keep on. No, you're better than this, you can go further. And good teacher has the capacity to see the potential. What are you very good at? And nobody's going to be very good at everything. So to really be able to do that as a teacher, as he was saying, teachers are not superheroes, superwoman, no. They are human, but they have to be very good on knowing the human nature, of knowing what is this student going through, how can we foster, how can we challenge. The more you challenge, it means that you trust the capacity to go further. And His Excellency was mentioning discipline, right? We are missing this super millennial principles that took humanity to where we are today. That is not, you said silver bullet, is not a magic formula. And we have this, we haven't mentioned here, but social media is creating another challenge for young people because they see fast track, become a millionaire quickly. I teach you, Brazil is the second social media consumer. It's super. And you see the guys that are super beautiful, super rich, and they want a fast track to get rich. And I don't believe in that. We don't believe that. We believe at Anima in hard work, in discipline, consistency, teamwork, and something very important that was said in the other panel, to change the world is also a teamwork. So we need to have a right balance between competitiveness, that is super important because competitiveness is driving innovation. Otherwise, so what is the advantage of such a country, such technology? But collaboration. And this is the super fertile place to be in the MIT, where we can bring all our potential individually, and this is something that is super of the human nature, to really know what you're very good at, and to really accept what you're not good at, and ask for help and work together. So for me, making university more human is basically bringing the human being with everything holistically, as he was saying, with our problems, with our questions, and not having right answers, multiple choice, fixed mindset. We need to be open to live with the uncertainty, as we started yesterday morning, learning that uncertainty is not, is different from risk, but it's really to be able to be prepared for the unpredictable.
And find the kind of purpose that could give us a bit more harmony in our society.
If we don't have roots, if we don't have a safe base, it's harder to live with the uncertainty.
Elias, can I build on that?
I was coming to you, so go ahead, please. Yes.
Well, so I think a couple of reactions. So I think one is we're in the middle of a technology shift, I would argue, a pretty significant technology shift. And during technology shifts, there are many things to think about. I think the two or three that I just name is there are market dynamics that are at play. And I don't think we're at a stage where we know what the path is going to be. And so one implication that all of us should be thinking about is there's a path in the future where AI is centralized, where it's consolidated, where a lot of our infrastructure is dependent on one or two mega corporations. There's another path that's much more open, much more decentralized, much more transparent, where we can interrogate the AI models we're using, better understand them, train them on more diverse data sets. There's this DARE Institute run by Timnit Gebru, which I strongly recommend looking into. They're doing work around, for example, creating African LLMs, right, that are kind of better tailored to African languages. So when you think about like this line that English is a new programming language, I would argue that any natural language should be the new programming language, but that's not going to happen like this. That's going to require work, and it's likely going to require a more decentralized, distributed approach to technology development. So I think that's point number one. Point number two is that a humanistic approach is not inherently going to happen. So even if I just look at like data on PlayLab, so we work with educators around the world, like large systems, including large districts in the United States. We work with university systems, every California community college, universities in the city like Tufts and Boston College. Unfortunately, we don't work with MIT yet. But what we've noticed is two things, right? People bring their assumptions about teaching, learning, and about human beings to how they use AI and how they build with it. Concretely, we see people in K-12 building worksheet generators, building ways to like make more mediocre forms of teaching more efficient. And we also see people using AI to enhance human-centered learning, right? Increase the rigor of discussions, personalize projects in really meaningful ways, connect learning to the real world in ways that just weren't possible beforehand. We see both happening on the same technology, right? And so I think the second thing is there's a real question of what are our values about learning, about the world we want to create, and how might we use the technology to bring that to life. And I think the last one, and it goes back to Alim, right? And to His Excellency's point, we're not going to solve this overnight. Mm-hmm. Change in education is cultural. And cultural change happens over decades, not years, decades. And so I think that the question for us is, how do we start doing work that can grow, right, using a biological metaphor very intentionally, grow over decades and live beyond us? I think that's the thing I'm wondering most about right now.
Stay there, because I wanna ask His Excellency when we spoke, I had a feeling that if you go back 100 years, they created education for the purpose of the industrialization era, and now you're with other countries, you're leading this kind of new vision to say, okay, the future is going to be heavily AI, and we need to have the kind of system based on better integration of these new tools, and hence potentially a revolution in education is finally happening. How are we at a pivotal, kind of super transition moment?
Well, Walter Gretzky, actually not Wayne Gretzky, the father of Wayne, said, I'm going to skate to where puck will be, not where it has been, right? So this is what we're trying to do. We're a quite small developing country. We really have to be pragmatic. Values are important. Ancestral background is important. Human connection is important. But in order to survive, and we are in a quite complex neighborhood. We're a country squeezed between Russia, China, Persia, Iran, and India. Talk me about bad neighborhood. And so we have to be really pragmatic. So what we can take out of this new AI economy which is going to emerge. So we are at the pivotal point, you're right about that. We are incorporating full power of AI. As I mentioned, that great promise of AI has to be delivered. So we are very pragmatic in a way. We say, well, we're going to make it part of our national curricula. And now China has declared a new strategy, education strategy, China 2035. And they're introducing AI as early as primary school.
Childhood.
Elementary, primary school. University of California system, it's big in the news. You could see 460,000 students at 20 plus University of California will have that compulsory AI element. And we already did it on a national level. And the real idea is to create huge, massive funnel out of our education system, where every student will have a chance to create his own AI startup. And as Yusuf started this idea of vibe coding, the venture capital is changing. And unfortunately, yes, the bulk of venture capital is now looking for anything AI. And as our friend here said, you add AI to everything, it sounds sexy. So AI education, AI startups. There are more now venture capital in AI startups than in any other startup. So we're adding a venture capital fund, $100 million to seed fund as student startups. And we are bringing 4 supercomputers to give enough computing power for training purposes. So it's a massive national level funnel to give every student a chance to launch his startup, AI startup in the college.
We need to clone more Minister of Education around the world like you. We're almost at the end of but I do want to have a reaction on His Excellency's wise words. And let's start with you, Paula. Yeah.
You brought a very important word, that is pragmatism. And for me, maybe as educators, the key mission is to take care of 2 gentlemen. One is pragmatism and the other is purpose. Because purpose without pragmatism has no impact. And pragmatism without purpose makes no sense. So that's my final message.
Thank you.
Hard to follow up, huh? I think the food...
Countries, they are building future for their nations. And you need to take, basically, you need to make a decision on how much risk I can take to potentially build a prosperous future. So it's important to at some point make a direction, right?
It absolutely is, and I do think the caution or the warning, I think, is I'm going to re-pick up what Yusuf said earlier, right? There's an opportunity to make mediocre efficient, right? That's what AIs can do. You're seeing this on your platform. We're seeing this in everyday classroom. How do you make what you're doing that isn't particularly great better, faster, lazier? Or there's an opportunity to create an environment where people are able to be creative and imagine and iterate and fail and all that. And I think this is what I think the promise of AI is going to be, but it has to be in that pragmatic set that His Excellency talked about, because ultimately we need to step forward. The step forward is not AI for the sake of AI. It's actually still going back to the core of why we're doing education. It's what you're saying. It's the essence of citizenship, it's the essence of being a human. And AI is a tool. It's an extremely powerful tool that has immense potential, but it has the potential of just being effective mediocrity. It's possible.
Super, yeah, brilliant. Aline?
I think for me it would be two words, context and culture. Coming from Rwanda, where we do have our own challenges in education, and so and what you're doing is actually very relevant. I mean, in 2008, the country changed from being a francophone country to now being an anglophone country, and teachers have to be trained, and all of this happening overnight. And then you have the ambition of a country, and then it really is that each country will have their unique challenges, opportunities, and their edge, and all that linked to where the country is heading and their own ambition. And through that, I think it is important to then understand what is the role of technology and how can we leapfrog based on the capabilities and what we see in AI in terms of how we enhance learning, and how do you do that where at the same time you're building digital literacy. So I think it's just the complexities of each of the different countries, but also a lot of opportunities that can be tapped on.
Talking about teachers, actually, going back to this point, teachers are developers of our children's software. So they are building our children's software, and they have to be updated on all fronts. AI is a tool, part of it. Being a human is a big part of it. So I think by thanking our teachers at the beginning and telling them they are not only educators, they are inventors for our future.
Yusuf, the final word is yours.
No pressure. I think really just building on what folks have said, I think one is how do we build systems and institutions that enable long-term experimentation? I think when it comes to public institutions, saying you're experimenting can often carry a lot of baggage and have a negative connotation. But if we really think about what's needed, we need to be trying things, reflecting on what's working, what's not, and then iterate forward on that. I think the second thing that I would name, though, again, is derivative thinking, I think, is dangerous. And what I mean by that is it's easy to model ourselves off of places like MIT that are established, and there's a lot that MIT does well, but there's a lot that doesn't work well, and that's not the right thing to scale to your context. I think the analogy to that is like actually venture capital, right? So I think I'm curious to learn more about your initiatives. I know very little about your context. I think the push I'd make is there's a real question around, I think if AI is lowering the barrier to create software, and if you follow that logic out, right, venture capital, the end game of venture capital is what? It's monopoly. It's consolidation. And the question I'd ask you is if you want to really raise the ship for all people in your country, do you want a market, a country where you have many consolidated industries, many monopolies? And the answer is probably no, right? And so I think that then the question becomes, what kind of capital structures do you want to set up to incentivize maybe smaller and medium businesses that might create more competition, more diversity? And so I think that's the other thing I'd push on is not just generic cultures for experimentation, but then the intentional strategic decisions that help you think about how you want your market structured and how you want those innovations to actually play out.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for the effort you're leading in your own organization and your government to make a difference. This is really appreciated. And on your note, I think the team could take note of this final word for the next kind of panel next year. And once again, thank you for the audience. We wish you a great end of the day. Thank you.